virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate.
Jamie, I'm sorry,
being broadcast.
Jamie, 1 second. I just promoted Susan up to a panelist. She was, we didn't have her in here, so could we just pause that until Susan gets settled? My apologies. Susan, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Jen.
Okay, excellent. Jamie already started the meeting, so go on, Mr. Chairman. Sorry about that.
All right, I'm going to start all over again. Good evening. Welcome to the second meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We're going to do our best to be efficient and let everyone participate. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be aware of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen in your background. The chair recognizes the attendance of staff members, Jen, Kevin, Alyssa, Amy, and our recording secretary, Susan, and the attendance of our esteemed colleague on the Board of Selectmen, Sam Patterson. Let's see. We have attendance of all commissioners with the exception of Maury and Russ. Therefore, for the record, the appointed alternates for this meeting are Pat and Peter. To the commissioners for commenting, you know I'll call on you at the appropriate time. Let's try not to speak over each other. And I'll remind you all votes are done by roll call. So when I call your name, state your name and your vote, even if you've made the motion or the second. To our public participants, there will be an opportunity for public comment for each hearing. If you'd like to comment on a particular hearing, you may submit any comments or questions via the chat function once that hearing has been opened. At the appropriate time, I will call for public comments and any submissions will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are posted on the agenda. First up are minutes of August 26th.
Mr. Chair.
Anyone?
I will move to
Yes.
accept the minutes with a necessary clarification, which I don't have the answer to, on page 8. Halfway down the page, under the Dana Brown, White Pine Lane, Falmouth. Matthew Creighton, BSC Group, talks about the project that removes existing house. Parentheses, it says 380 square feet. And then to build a new house, 325 square feet. That seems quite small. Should it be 1,300 and whatever? What is I'd like to know the size. I think it's probably not all that important, but it is mentioned in here. So I'm not sure how we get the answer to that.
You don't think it's a tiny house?
No, I thought my recollection in the meeting was that it was around 1,300 square feet. That's what caught my eye. Which would make sense.
Yeah, I think we could check.
So I'm fine
Correct
with
that.
approving these minutes with the exception of somebody, whether it's staff or something, just looking in the narrative and finding out what the actual size is and correcting it.
Jen can correct that until.
I can do that.
So
I'll second.
So I'll move to approve it with that correction.
Second.
Betsy, did you second?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as written with the correction on White Pine. Take the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin? Kevin O'Brien? Kevin O'Brien?
He's coming.
Be a sec.
Last call.
O'Brien, aye.
Thank you. Mark?
Ernie, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Aye, and thanks you, Courtney, for your attention to detail.
All right. The minutes are accepted. Next up, our request for determination of applicability. First item, Lawrence T. and Valerie Norris Sullivan, 39 Jericho Path, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to remove pavement and a deck from an accessory structure and to expand the existing deck of the single-family dwelling. Evan,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
I second.
thank you. We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. I'll call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin O'Brien,
O'Brien, I.
Mark,
Bernie, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Jen, are there any public questions on this one?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It is unanimous. Next up is James and Donna Curry, 0 Great Bay Street, parcel number 000-000B. East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct beach nourishment along the coastal beach over previously installed coir rolls. Kevin,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a
again,
still September 23rd.
Bird, so move.
O'Brien, second.
thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this till 9:23. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Mark,
Bernie, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous that RDA is continued to 9:23. Next up, our request for hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up is James P. and Janice E. Healy, 295 Edgewater Drive West, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise RAZE, an existing single-family dwelling, and to construct a new single-family dwelling with a garage, reconfigured driveway, decks with stairs, walkways, front porch entries, spa area, bulkhead, AC units, rinse station, dry wells, and mitigation plantings, with the associated grading, utilities, and landscaping. Jen,
Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Raul from Cape Mountains Engineering up as a panelist to present the project.
thank you.
Good evening.
Hi,
for the-
Raul.
Hi. Good evening. For the record,
Earl, you're up whenever you're ready.
For the record, Raul Isardi from Cape and Islands Engineering. The project is at 295 Edgewater Drive West in East Falmouth. The applicant, as mentioned, is James and Janice Haley. And the project, as it was noted, is raising the existing single-family dwelling that's been in existence since the 1950s. And in its place, construct a new single-family residence with an attached single-car garage.
Raul, I'm going to
Excuse me,
interrupt. Do you
Raul.
have a plan
Will
you
you be
want to
sharing
share?
the plan?
Can anyone see this plan?
Yes, thank you, Raul.
Okay. So the project is to raise the existing single-family dwelling. It's been in existence since the 1950s. Based on the current flood zones, the existing house is in the flood zone. The project is to remove the house and build in its place a new house with attached garage. The garage is going to be a single car garage. Also included is reconstruction of the driveway further away from the resources. The resources on the property and within 100 feet of the property are land under the ocean, which is eel pond, land containing shellfish, salt marsh that spans the entire water frontage on the west side of the property, coastal beach. There's eroding and non-eroding coastal banks. There is land subject to coastal storm flowage, and further to the east on the abutting property, there is a BVW, bordering vegetated wetland. The property, as I mentioned, fronts on the eastern edge of Eel Pond, and it has been developed since the 1950s. The owners want to build a house that is out of the flood zone. For that purpose, the new house is being pushed away from the flood zone by about 7 feet. So the changes are as follows. Currently, the house is in the flood zone. The new house is not going to be in the flood zone. The existing house is on the coastal bank, so there is zero setback to the coastal bank. The proposed house will be 8 feet from the top of the coastal bank. The existing house is 23 feet from the marsh. The proposed house is 29 feet from the marsh. Existing house is 30 feet from mean high water. The proposed house will be 37 feet from mean high water. The proposed changes do increase the amount of square footage in terms of development on the site, and therefore it would need mitigation plantings. The mitigation plantings are calculated as 2,763 square feet. The applicant preferred to have most of the planting on the northern side of the property where they've been clearing. Well, the site has been cleared all along the north and the south side, but they would prefer to have plantings on the north side to avoid obstructing the use of their backyard, which is the yard that they use the most. The driveway, as I mentioned, is being reconstructed, not just to keep it away from the coastal bank and resources, but also to service the new garage. Currently, there is no garage on the property. In addition to these modifications to the driveway, we are proposing to do a grass swale to capture all the runoff from the driveway instead of letting it leach into the coastal banks. The existing house does not have dry wells. That is another improvement the proposed project is doing. We are proposing dry wells to collect roof runoff for the new structure. We do propose a limit of work that encompasses all the proposed demolition and construction of the project. The proposed mitigation planting, it's outside of this limits of work. What we're doing with the proposed plantings is concentrating the majority on the north side, where we currently have an eroding coastal bank along the shores of Eel Pond. We chose this area to enhance the existing vegetation and allow for shrubs to consolidate the soils in the area. Currently, it's cleared all the way up to and into the coastal bank, but the clearing does not reach the eroding part of the bank. The eroding part, it's a fringe that it's on the toe of the existing coastal bank. So we were proposing approximately 1,900 square feet of mitigation planting on the north side and approximately 870 square feet along the southern area that we call mitigation area number 2. The project will be an improvement overall on the property, and it will continue to protect the resources, and it will enhance protection to the resources with improvements by relocating the house out of the flood zone, adding drainage to the site, and adding additional buffer to some of the areas that currently don't have buffer. I will also point out that the area that we're proposing for mitigation on the south side, by definition of a coastal bank, it is a land that slopes more than 10%. So it is technically plantings on a coastal bank. This past Monday afternoon, we received the staff comments and review. We tried to address them as quickly as we could. So we reached out to the homeowner, and Yesterday, we started talking with the homeowner, and today we provided a brief response to staff comments. The plan has not been revised for any of the responses, but it was mostly a response to some clarification on how the buffer zone A's were delineated, how some of the existing site features that were noted by staff were not necessarily on our client's property and not necessarily of our client's possession. That had to do with some firewood and a bag of clay sand. There's also some comments about additional plantings to be shifted from the northern side to the south side. The homeowner is willing to do so, but they will prefer not to shift all of it. One of the items that we touched on our response to staff report was that the client was willing to shift about a third of the area from the north side to the south side, but they don't like to lose the backyard that they currently have. Currently, there is proposed 870 square feet of mitigation planting on the south side. They'll be willing to add increase by 600 square feet or 640 square feet over on the south side. The proposed driveway will be paved, replacing the existing driveway. One of the reasons they want to remove the driveway that is there is because this driveway is coming off of a town road, but it's not a developed road. It's more used like a path to access the beach of Eel Pond. And some of the neighbors or some of the public that uses that path to access the water have been parking on their driveway. So by repositioning the driveway, it looks more like it is coming up Edgewater Drive West and not really that side drive. And it will probably discourage some of the public from parking there. Planting in this area will also assist in not having the public using that grass area to park. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Raul. You would stop screen sharing, please? Thank you. Jen, do you want to start?
Yes, Raul did manage to try to answer most of our questions as quickly as possible. The reason the staff report came in Monday is the site wasn't particularly staked when the staff went out there. So Raul, when you have a project before the commission, can you just make sure that when you submit, the day you submit the notice of intent, that your site is staked? Because now that we have a good staffing level, we're jumping on these projects, and we can't just wait till a week before the hearing, because then you don't get your staff report in time. So just in the future, if you can make sure that your guys stake your site when you submit the application, that would be really helpful to you. I appreciate you trying to address some of the staff's concerns on the mitigation plantings, but if this, the commission has been out there, which one's area A and B, Raul? Is A to the north and B to the south, or I got them vice versa?
I call them area 1 is
Okay,
north, area 2
north,
is
okay. So area 1 is really, really shaded. So the staff does have some concerns with the plantings that are there. It would like to see more of those plantings move to the southern side. So we're still gonna go with that. Some of the other questions that the staff have answered. Raul, I just realized one thing when I was looking at this plan, so sorry I didn't bring it up in the staff report. That corner of the house, is that still in the Falmouth velocity zone?
there is a corner of the proposed house and deck that is in the 25B zone.
Okay, so you know that will have to be on pilings in that area, that, you know, the board does have that anything in the V zone should be on pilings. So is that going to be a sheer wall in the commission's V zone?
My understanding of the V zone is that the first floor has to be elevated 2 feet above the
And
Falmouth
it
V
needs to
zone.
be on open pilings, yep. So you may want to look at the little corner of that house, and if possibly you can shift the house slightly, that would be great to just get that little corner out of there. I just noticed it. But other than that, Mr. Chairman, I think the staff's main concerns are the plantings in that really shaded area that is that has a very thick canopy, and I'm not quite sure the plantings would do well over there. I don't have anything more to add after that. Kevin, do you, Newton? Kevin Newton?
No, Mr. Chairman, I have no additional comments.
Oh,
Thank you.
just one thing, Mr. Chairman, we will need a revised plan showing the plantings that Raul submitted in his graphic this afternoon. The relocation of those plantings. So we would need that on a revised plan prior to closing this hearing.
Okay. Raul, do you understand what she's saying about shifting the house?
I understand what you're saying. I'll have to review that with the homeowner because my understanding of the Falmouth velocity zone, the 25-foot flood zone, was the first floor to be 2 feet above that flood elevation.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not putting you on the spot to accept it. I just want to make sure we're clear what she's asking for.
And I
for
apologize,
what she's
Raul, when you started talking about the flood zone, I started really kind of like squinting my eyes and didn't really see that Falmouth V zone in there. So
Yeah, the velocity zone is elevation
have time.
14. Elevation
was that?
14. The velocity zone is elevation 14, and the first floor is proposed at 17.
Okay. It's not the first floor elevation I'm worried about. It's that sheer concrete foundation wall. And other than that, Raul did address all the comments that Alyssa had and attempted to address our concerns with the plantings.
Okay. All right, we're going to go with commission comments. Betsy?
So just a couple of comments. One is how you've changed the 650 square feet of plantings to the south. I think that's fine. And I think it was a nice design. I think this is a nice design. And I think some planting should still be to the north. Whatever shrubs can deal with shade, and I'm sure there's some that can. And yeah, Raul, resolve with Jen the the velocity zone issue before you do a revised plan. And other than that, it's nice to see you. And that's all I have to say.
So Betsy, are you saying you're
Thank you.
okay with the 1297 square feet to that northern part? Betsy, you're on mute.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, good. All
Yeah.
right, just to be clear.
I mean, that's the area where there's an eroding coastal.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand that. My concern was just the shade, so we can work with that.
Yep.
Courtney?
I think it's a good project. I agree with the suggestions made so far, and obviously you're gonna resolve the flood zone, velocity zone issue. My only concern and is, does the project really need a paved driveway? Or could it be something a little more pervious?
All right, anything else?
No.
Okay, Kevin?
No questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mark?
Well, the only observation I had is when I was out at the lot, it looked like the so-called mitigation area 2, taking credit for 870 square feet, is already pretty heavily wooded with woody shrubs. And I'm not quite sure why that has to be cleared out and replanted and credited for that. Seems like it's already pretty good shape, which means something else ought to be added.
Raul,
Okay.
address that, please.
I can address some of the questions that have come up to this point. First, for that last one, all of the proposed mitigation is in areas that are currently grass, areas that are being mowed and have been mowed. There is plantings that are adjacent to existing woodland, not woodland, but existing shrubs. That area 2, which is the southern area, that whole area that's being called 870 square feet, that is currently lawn areas. And it blends on from the current property owners to the adjacent neighbor's property. It is almost like a blend. It's difficult to know where property lines are because all these three lots used to be one property, three houses on one property. At some point, it got divided. But these plantings are proposed in grass areas. It's not being proposed on areas that are wooded. The paved driveway, the current owner has a paved driveway and they want to keep a paved driveway. So that's why we're calling a paved driveway to be constructed. It is counted for the mitigation planting, so we're still offering the required mitigation planting for the residual of the paved driveways. And just to follow up on Betsy's comment, one of the things we want to do on the northern planting area is reinforce that coastal bank, which at the toe of it is eroding. And anything that can alleviate that, I think it's a good approach to this project.
All right. Pat,
I have no questions at this time. It looks like a good project.
thank you. Peter?
I agree with Betsy. No further questions.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I thought this was a good project. I thought the staff and Raul did a good job of trying to work out the issues. I'm trying to absorb what Jennifer said earlier, but I do think this is a nice project and a market improvement to the current condition.
Hold on. All right. Jen, are there any public comments?
No.
All right. Raul, thank you for all the dry wells. You got a little project ahead of you, straightening that driveway out. Is like what, a 3.5 foot drop to the road?
Yeah, the driveway on the southern side, it's very steep, but it is less steep than the current driveway it is. So we're trying to push the driveway on the south further north to try to use some of the higher grounds and lessen that
Yep.
steepness.
Okay. So we just need to work out we need a revised plan for the mitigation and,
In that, yeah, in that quirky little corner. So I can work with Raul on that.
okay.
But you do need
Alright,
to
so
continue
Raul-
for that velocity zone issue. And that new plan with the mitigation.
Hey, Raul, would you be looking for a continuance?
If the board is okay with me squaring this off with staff, I prefer to have that be a condition. No reduction in the mitigation plantings than what's being proposed.
Staff would be fine if it was just the mitigation, but if the board's concerned about that little corner in the velocity zone, then that would have to come back to you. If you're not concerned with that little corner in the velocity zone, then, you know, we can condition the plan to match the schematic that he sent this afternoon and get that revised plan in. So that's up to the board.
If I can add to
I
that,
think we should have the revised.
if I can add to that, the current homeowners want to start as soon as possible. So if you condition that corner, if it stays in the Falmouth B zone, be not in a vertical full foundation, then we can have that as a condition, and they'll truncate that corner for the foundation, just for the foundation purpose. Footprint of the house will still be up there for the main house, but that corner could be trunked out of the Falmouth B zone.
That would require a revised plan, Raul.
It wouldn't show on a site plan because the footprint of the house stays the same.
Well, then I would want to see it on a cross section. You understand?
Yeah, I would
That's a little vague and uncomfortable for me. And I understand your client's desire to start right away, but You know, these are issues that we have to address.
When's the next meeting?
Unfortunately, Courtney, it's not gonna be until the 23rd. You don't meet the 9th, and the 16th is full, because I already told somebody else on the agenda tonight they could have the 16th, and that's completely full. So it would be unfortunately the 23rd. I don't make the schedule. Don't shoot the messenger.
Could we look at the plan again about the portion that Jen's referring to on the property?
It's tiny.
Could we look at the plan again, please?
I'm
Raul,
trying
can
to
you share
it.
a plan?
So there is
Thank
this
you, Rob.
this corner right here of about 6 feet by 2 feet, a triangle piece.
I can't see what you're doing. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Raul, I think you're gonna need to shift your plan up. There you go.
Can anybody see this green dashed line that my mouse is going over?
Uh-huh.
So the part of the house that is in it is this piece of triangle. It's about 6 feet by 3 feet. So what I can have is the contractor trunks this portion of the foundation out, and the foundation will be from here out. This little bump out of 8.2 by 17 will be above the ground. They can support it with 2 piles in these 2 corners. Foundation stays back here, and this 17 by 8, it's above.
If the board's comfortable with Raul giving me a revised plan that shows that, and there was a way you can draw that on the plan, Raul, to not show that as a sheer wall, kind of dash it out or something like that, the staff would be fine with that. But I'm not okay with just leaving it the way it is, because when it comes to the building department sign off, it could get confusing at that point. So I do need something that shows that sheer wall outside of that velocity zone. I think
Okay.
I had one on, was it J Road, that did something similar to that, where half the house was cantilevered over,
Right.
and they were able to kind of like dash it out, Raul. So if you can do that, I can put that in the special conditions, that revised plan showing the mitigation plantings according to his graphics submitted on September 2nd, and that we show a new plan with that corner foundation kind of truncated and dashed out where the cantilevered portion of the house is, I'd be fine with that.
So
But I'm not going to accept the plan the way that house is shown right now, or at least our recommendation to the commission is you shouldn't.
So I'd be comfortable with that, with Raul understanding that if that revised plan isn't in Jen's hands before we actually vote on this, then we can't accept it. You see what I mean, Raul?
Yeah, this will be my priority for tomorrow.
All right.
This requires, I'm sorry to be a bit of a stickler on this, but I think we need to have a cross-section that shows this, how this is actually being drawn, not just a line on a plan. That's what we've required in the past. Now, if that can be done and submitted, and it's drawn up by, a structural engineer, then, and it can get submitted so we can consider it when we consider the order, I guess I'm okay with it, but normally I would like to see a continuance.
Courtney, I don't think we asked for that in the J Road one, where they just kind of dashed it out with that column.
I thought we had
You just want to make sure our
we asked to see a
building department, Courtney, 1 second. Our concern is when we're comparing the 2 plans to the building department's plans and our plan. So I need something that shows that, like, I don't particularly need a cross section, but I need something that I can match up with a building department foundation wall. So
We,
I
we
just want to
never,
make sure it doesn't get lost.
No, I know. We're very.
I mean, you know, in the past,
Records,
when
Courtney.
we have had situations in the past where you have some tight issues, whether we were asking, because they were digging a foundation too close to the limit of work. We wanted a section showing how that was being shored up. You know, and we've wanted cross sections.
that's two different.
And that's why I'm being a stickler on it.
Well,
Now,
this is
I'm
not-
happy to,
this
you know,
is
I
not
would
really
prefer
that
to see it.
complex,
Hold
Courtney.
on a minute, Betsy, let me finish. I'm fine, I would prefer to see a continuance. On the other hand, I understand that it's not gonna be possible to have one next week or whatever. So I'm happy to have a cross-section submitted so we can consider it when we vote the order.
No, Courtney, if you're not gonna consider something when you vote, because then that means the hearing is closed. So it's either a very specific plan that needs to be submitted, or it does need to be continued. And as sympathetic as I am that the applicants would like to begin right away, they did just put this application in on the 18th of August. So, you know, holding the commission's feet to the fire because they put their application in mid-August and they want to start right away. That's a little unfair to this board and what you do.
The application was submitted on
Very,
July
very-
15th.
What was that, Steve?
The application was submitted on July 15th. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I have it in my desk.
August 18th received.
Yeah, I have it stamped August 18.
On
15th.
that?
It's stamped August 18.
Yeah, received August 18th.
Yes, Steve, we have to have it heard within 21 days of receipt. So,
Yeah, Steve, it wasn't submitted in July.
Okay. Maybe I confused two plans on Edgewater.
Yeah,
I apologize.
thank you.
Pat, I'm sorry if I put you on the spot here, but can I ask you, are we getting into a gray area here without getting a revised plan?
I'm always happier if we have something that's very specific and that's been voted by the commission. But if the commission is predisposed to giving very specific instructions and giving the determination, passing it over to staff, to our administrator, that's fine.
It has to be very, very specific.
Very specific directions that this,
Oh.
you know, if we vote in approval, it's conditioned upon, and then the list of things, the mitigation plants on the plan as shown in your draft. And then this notion about a cantilevered portion of the house being identified by a dotted line kind of throws me. I would like to see something structural too. I'm listening to Courtney, he's making a lot of sense. But that's for the commission to discuss more. I see the problem that Jen's talking about when you're up against the building department's plans. You need to be able to say very specifically here, this plan says it has to be cantilevered. And this is, I mean, I don't understand and again, I don't know how to draw these plans, but I don't understand the big problem with showing on the plan the dotted line, but also having another sheet that shows the cross section. And that could be one of the things that the commission requires, that be submitted to Jen for her ultimate acceptance.
And that's fine.
Okay.
I can look at the cross section, Courtney. It's the language you used is we would consider it. And you consider something, you can require something very, very specific. And that's fine, but when you use the language, consider you're getting into that gray area because the hearing's closed and you have no more deliberation. I mean, you have no more open meeting.
Okay, and that's.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's, I'm sorry I wasn't being more clear.
Nope, that's fine.
I'm fine with their submitting a cross-section that's been drawn by an engineer showing how this is going to look and work and be designed and built. But it has to be submitted
Well-
and you can review it. And if you want Jamie's construction person or I am, we can come in and review it with you just so that there's no issues. That's fine.
All right, Courtney, let me say this. I would be okay with him drawing it on his plan, meaning Raul, without the requirement of a structural engineer in that two things. One is he's not going to get a structural engineer to draw that house plan in a week. Secondly is he would have to have that to submit for the building permit. So ultimately that would be shown. For our purposes, if it showed the foundation pulled back and pilings installed, that would suffice for what we're looking for, if I understand what Jen's saying.
Yeah,
So
just,
my opinion, and it's just that, is that, hold on. We should have, we need to continue this. It needs to have the Raul's drawing showing that prop foundation and the piles and the corrected, if you will, if you allow me to use that word, corrected mitigation. And I'm not comfortable closing it that way. So again, that's just my opinion. I think if it's just those two things, I was very vocal with Jen about not piling on 916, but I'd be okay if that went to 916 if it's only for those two clarifications. That's my
Going
2
to
cents. I'm done.
916, just to let the board know, going to 916, you have at least one continued, that's going to be very easy. You do have another amended ORAD, so I mean, it looks like it's going to be a lot, but it isn't. So right now you have 3 new notices and 3 continued, one of them which will go very easy. So this could go very simply if you wanted to put it on the 16th. I was just trying to, Jamie, to kind of alleviate, you know, it's up to the board. If you want it on the 16th, we can put it on the 16th.
That would be the cleanest.
Yeah, okay. Raul, would that work for your client?
If it's for the 16, I think a week is it's not gonna hurt the client.
It's 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
yeah, I'm fine with that. I think, and
Okay.
then
The
then it's a
16th.
lot cleaner, because once we have all this thing in, I don't see any more issues. We can close it right away.
All right. So at the request of the client, I asked for a continuance to September 16.
So moved. Gladfelter,
Bird second.
Okay, so Raul, you're gonna have to have that plan in, what, next week, Jen?
Yep, Raul, you have to have the plan to me on the 9th. Can you do that?
Yes.
Okay.
he's gonna do it tomorrow.
It's first priority thing.
So Raul, are you clear what we're looking for?
Yeah. The mitigation plan is already done.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue until 9/16. Are there any more comments? All right, I'm calling for the vote.
No.
Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Pretty, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Thank you. It is unanimous. We're continued. This hearing is continued until September 16th. Thank you, Raul.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Raul.
All right, continued hearings under a notice of intent. First one is Francis M. Keegan, 42 Deer Run Lane, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to rebuild existing steps, to extend a stone wall, to conduct invasive species management, to replace invasive species with beach grass, and to install mitigation plantings. Jen
And
and or
this is,
Kevin?
and this is the hearing I said could have the 16th. So the applicant has requested a continuance until the 16th. We've met, just for the board to know, we've met with the applicant, with the applicant's representative. We're hoping the revised plan addresses all of the staff's concerns. We met out in the field with them.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until 9/16. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
Reluctantly, because I would just like to note for the record, according to my sheet here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 7th or 8th continuance on this.
You must have the,
I think you're looking
You
at,
know,
it's
is
only,
everybody looking at the right plans tonight?
it's only the second, Kevin.
It's the second,
Sorry,
Kevin.
Sorry, I got the wrong one. I apologize. I'll accept it.
Mark,
Renee, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. This hearing is continued until September 16th. Next up, Scott Tynell, 163 Bay Road, North Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct shellfish aquaculture within Rands, Canal, and Megansett Harbor. This, Kevin, is the one you were looking for.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Attorney Brodsky up as well as Scott and Alex Tynell, who are the applicants.
Mr. Chairman, I believe this,
Yes,
I think Betsy can check this, that this opened quite some time ago and has been continued for a significant period of time. And when it opened, I was not on the commission.
That's correct.
Okay, so maybe you need to bring somebody else up.
Well, Mark's on
Okay.
the quorum.
Okay,
Mark's already on the quorum.
all right.
So just so the commission knows, this hearing was continued a number of times because of potential zoning implications. I spoke with town council the other day. There has been an opinion from the applicant's attorney and an opinion that zoning does not apply, and there has been an opinion from the abutters attorney that zoning does apply. In the absence of a opinion from the building commissioner, which they have not been able to obtain as of yet, council thinks that we can move forward with tonight's hearing with basically the statement and a finding in your decision that it is unclear at this time whether zoning does apply and that the applicant is proceeding at their own risk with this project. So we are just going to review this under our authorities under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw, and the zoning issues will be dealt with at a later date because town council was not going to give their opinion of whether zoning applied, but said that we can move forward because it is unclear at this time.
okay.
We do have a comment from Brian Wall, Jamie, that I can read at the end.
Okay. All right, so is everybody clear that we're going to address this based on the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth regulations? And we're leaving zoning up to the appropriate people. So whatever decision we have, that still has to be addressed by the applicant. So is everybody clear on that?
And just to give some background to the commission, the Wetlands Protection Act does say, and this is what the holdup was, that the applicant shall obtain or apply for all obtainable permits prior to coming to this board, which is why we were on hold because of the zoning component. But again, council has said that you can proceed.
Okay, so this has been continued like 100 times, so we're going to move forward with this. All right, so does Mr. Tynell want to present anything?
Mr. Chairman, good evening. My name is Adam Brodsky. Would it be appropriate for me to speak with the commission?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Brodsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Brodsky. I'm an environmental and land use attorney with Drowan, Tacho, and Morgan in Hingham. It's nice to see Ms. Harris in a different context. And I was brought in to address the zoning issue, but Scott and Alex did ask me to assist them now with trying to bring the conservation matter to a close. And so I'm feverishly trying to get up to speed with respect to the project. Given Ms. Lincoln's comments, there's no need for me to speak to the requirements of the all obtainable permit requirement. She stated that its requirements were required to apply for all obtainable permits that are feasible to obtain. And at the present time, it's simply not feasible to get a determination. I did submit a request for determination to the building commissioner, Rod Palmer, in July 21. And unfortunately, we have not heard from him. But in any event, you may recall that Scott has received preliminary approval of this Shellfish aquaculture project from the Board of Selectmen. And also the Department of Marine Fisheries has determined that a license will not have a substantial adverse impact on shellfish or natural resources, both at the proposed grow area as well as in Rands Canal. And in fact, I just want to remind the commission, there are two separate DMF letters, one from September 13, 2016, and a second from March 30, 2018. And so now the issue is squarely before the commission. And I believe that the wetland issues are fairly narrow. I'm going to address first the principal wetland resource areas, which are land under ocean and land containing shellfish. As the commission is well aware.
1 second, Mr. Brodsky, I apologize. Mr. Chairman, would you like me, so just for the board, one of the issues on the last hearing, and I'm getting to my point, Ms. Attorney Brodsky, so I apologize, was that the applicant needed to submit a revised site plan. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to share that site plan while Attorney Brodsky is speaking?
Yes, please.
Okay, give me one moment, please. That way everybody kind of understands what we are discussing. So I'm going to share my screen. Mr. Chairman, can everyone see that? And please tell me you're looking at a site plan.
I can see it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, guys. Sorry about that, Attorney Brodsky.
Oh, no, thank you. And again, I'm coming in it late, so I want to be careful that I'm not repeating information that the commission may have already heard several times before. So I'm trying to keep my presentation pointed. But obviously this site plan depicts the landward portion of this project, Scott's property. It depicts the upweller, which I'll talk about in a moment, which is located at the end of a gravel parking area where there's presently a trailer. There are proposed bags to be stored in the water in Rands Canal adjacent to the existing float system. And of course, there's a approximately 5-acre grow area that's located further offshore that's not depicted on this particular site plan. So getting back to the relevant performance standards, Mr. Chairman, with respect to land under ocean under the Wetlands Protection Act, I believe this matter is governed by 310 CMR 10.256. If you have a water dependent project, it must be designed and constructed using best available measures and have no adverse effects on marine fisheries habitat. I believe that Scott and Alex have explained the project to you in detail, and in fact, it has been designed to conform to best management practices, including, for example, the best management practices for the shellfish industry prepared by the Southeastern Massachusetts Aquacultural Center, which are the BMPs that are recognized by DEP with respect to shellfish aquaculture projects. This project will not result in any alterations to water circulation, eelgrass, distribution of sediment, grain size, changes in water quality, or alterations to submerged land with high density of mollusks, as reflected in the DMF letters. Under your wetland bylaw, I just simply note that aquaculture is a specific wetland value called out to be protected under your bylaw. And so there's actually a bias under your bylaw in favor of aquaculture. And the relevant performance standard for land under ocean is Falmouth Wetland Regulation FWR 10.259, which is substantially similar to the Wetlands Protection Act performance standard. With respect to land containing shellfish under the State Act, it's governed by 310 CMR 10.344, which requires the project have no adverse effect on land or marine fisheries caused by, and some of the same factors, alterations of water circulation, alterations in relief elevations, compacting sediment by vehicular traffic, which is not relevant here, alterations in distribution of sediment grain size, alterations in natural drainage, again, which is not relevant, changes in water quality. And again, the proposed project will have none of these adverse effects, and the project complies with the Wetland Protection Act standard. I do want to call out the fact that in 310 CMR 10.37, it expressly provides, with respect to land containing shellfish, that projects approved by DMF intending to increase the productivity of land containing shellfish may be permitted, and aquaculture projects approved by local and state authorities may also be permitted. So there's an express recognition within both, within the State Act and a bias in favor of aquaculture. I do note that under your local bylaw, and in particular FWR 10.346 and 7, they're substantially similar to the wetlands regulations. And again, point out the fact that FWR 10.347 also recognizes that projects approved by DMF may be permitted. And as I've said, you've seen and should have in your file the 2 DMF letters approving this project. Now, I did mention that upweller, and it's explained to me by Scott and Alex, and I've reviewed some literature on. It's a portable basin. It's approximately 6 feet by 10 to 15 feet long, and it's used to grow shellfish. It's fed seawater. You see the proposed pipe that's going to connect that, and that'll be run over the existing pier. For lack of a better description, it looks like a large bathtub, and that's proposed to be located on the landward portion of the site as shown on the site plan, which is coincident with the FEMA AE flood zone. It's elevation 17. And therefore the upweller is located within lands subject to coastal storm flowage. And I do note it's located within buffer zone to the adjacent salt marsh, which is delineated also on the site plan. As you're aware, under the Wetlands Protection Act, there are no performance standards for work within land subject to coastal storm flowage. And at least with respect to activities within the buffer zone under the Wetlands Protection Act, they're permitted and allowed, provided that the project is not going to adversely impact any of the wetland values for the associated resource area. You have more specific requirements under your local regulations. So under FWR 10.384B, a project within an A zone cannot have an adverse effect by increasing the elevation or velocity of floodwaters or increasing flows. I'd respectfully suggest that a portable basin, approximately 6 foot by 10 feet long, is not going to have an adverse effect. It's not going to increase the elevation of floodwaters or increase flows. And I should note also that under FWR 10.384E5, again, there's another reference to the Commission's ability to permit a project approved by DMF intended to increase the productivity of land containing shellfish. And obviously that's what this project is entirely designed to do. With respect to buffer zone under the local bylaw, I believe the relevant provision is FWR 10.187C, which grants the Commission to permit work within previously developed buffer zones. And as I mentioned briefly, There's presently a trailer on the site in an open dirt area at the end of the existing gravel parking area. And the intention is simply to replace that trailer and put the upweller in that previously disturbed area. That area lacks natural vegetation, and I'd respectfully suggest it's previously developed buffer zone. The project, and particularly the upweller, is not going to increase impervious area, and there will be no increase in pervious area that will not support naturally vegetated buffer. It's unclear to me under your regulations, and I appreciate your guidance, whether that limited aspect of the project requires mitigation. If ultimately the commission is looking for mitigation to replace the trailer with the upweller, we'll certainly consider that and provide it. But it was not clear to me, given the way your bylaw is written in this particular instance, that triggered the requirement for mitigation. And so again, I'm coming in late. You very well may have questions that I did not anticipate, but based upon my review of the project meets all of the performance standards on under both the Wetlands Protection Act and your wetland bylaw. We're happy to provide any additional information that the commission requires, and I'll do my best to answer any questions. Scott and Alex have the same goal of this exercise. They're also looking to close the public hearing and obtain an order of conditions so that they can move on to the next step of the permitting process, which, as you know, is fairly extensive for an aquaculture project. So we're here to answer any additional questions you may have.
Thank you. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, one moment, please. So everybody should be looking at the site plan dated April 14th, 2020. Just to remind the board, you did receive multiple correspondence, number of correspondence from the abutters regarding this project. You received a lengthy one from Arlene Wilson and Associates, or Arlene A.M. Wilson and Associates back in January. You've received some correspondence from Attorney Wall regarding this project. You have received late today another correspondence from A.M. Wilson and Associates. So please review those documents prior. I do have a couple of questions for Scott and Alex. So how are the bags going to be secured? Let's just get down to the nitty gritty now. How are the bags going to be secured alongside or parallel to that dock?
The intention that I have is to use the same system that the town uses in Little Pond with the vortex anchors on four corners, and the bags are tethered toe to heel in straight lines, and they're anchored on the four corners and then run together. There's a PVC pipe that would slide up and down, securing the anchoring ropes. So as the tide raises and drops the bags, they are PVC would slide along the pipe, which is secured to the vortex anchor.
Okay, Scott, so where you have your proposed floating oyster bags, what's your water depth in that area? I think that was a concern of the abutter, that these bags would be resting on the bottom. It looks like where they are, you only have a foot or two of water. Is that correct? Or is it deeper in that area? The plan is showing 1 and 2 feet of water.
Well, the canal isn't symmetrical, so there are areas where there is more width for more bags. There are areas that have more depth for the water. So areas where the ground raises up more, then obviously we'd have areas and would not have the bags resting on the ground. The bags themselves are very, their floating depth is, I think, probably about 5 inches. So their draft is very minimal, and they won't be with the whole, we don't want them resting on the ground because we don't want them out of the water. We'll only be keeping them in areas where they will be, submerged for the whole period of the tidal flow.
And I'd like to just add that in the navigational channel outside of the dock depicted in the plot plan, the slope that drops from the shoreline into that channel is significant, that by the middle of the channel, you're at a depth of 6 to 10 feet. So it keeping in line with the boat traffic in the middle of the channel is significantly.
For the record, Susan, that was Alex Tynell. Next time, Alex, just state your name for the record, for our recording person. Thank you. Our concern is not so much the boat traffic, it's the impacts to the benthic habitat. So yeah, we're looking at, you know, what the water depth is in the area of bags. My other question is, how are you going to access that area? You have no access point. We see the pier. But are you just going to be walking down across the marsh and accessing those bags? How is that going to be done?
Probably just be doing it off the dock, because
Off
the
the dock.
easiest time, if it's a higher tide, I'd probably be doing it in a small rowboat, or I have a rib. I've got a 10-foot rigid inflatable that if I'm doing maintenance and the tide's higher, I can use that, and that's slow draft, so it gets me around the bags. If it's a lower tide, then I would simply just slip off the side of the dock with waders, or I mean, it's August without waders, and be able to service them from there.
Mm-hmm. And where is your grow out site?
The grow out site in Magansett Harbor?
Yes. So it's in Magansett Harbor.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Correct,
Yes,
yeah.
Okay. And that was previously permitted, correct, Scott?
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
And then the upweller, you're gonna be taking water out of the canal for the upweller. That water line is gonna be attached to the dock, or are you gonna be trenching that water line once you get onto your upland area?
My intention was to just attach it to the dock, unless the commission would prefer it trenched. I thought that it would be less of an impact to have it just anchored onto the side of the dock, go down, and then be attached on the float for the water exchange.
Okay. And forgive me if I missed this during Attorney Brodsky's presentation regarding the upweller. Is that just going to be placed on the ground, or are you going to be putting that on a concrete pad?
The gravel layer is very compact. It's been used either for a boat trailer or my other trailer for over 50 years. There are runners on the underside of the upweller. Whether I need a small patio block, if that would be necessary, I don't even think it really is, but at the most extent, it would probably just be a small patio block line underneath each of the runners would be the only thing necessary.
If I could comment that as well, there was a concern previously brought up that you guys were interested in anchoring it. So if you're okay with us placing it on the ground as it is, we would be open to that. However, for securing purposes, having a block system to put this upweller on would be beneficial too. So we'd be open to your suggestion.
Mm-hmm. And have you developed a storm plan yet? Like what would happen in the event of a major storm?
The one significant difference that I have with my upweller is the same as the upwellers that the town has down at the Falmouth Harbor. I had the I-beam runners placed horizontally along the instead of perpendicular, they run parallel to the unit, so that it's designed that I can easily the only thing I need to do is disconnect the pipe, and with a winch or a come along, I could draw it right up into the utility trailer and remove it from sight in the event of a Cat 1 hurricane or something, where a storm surge was a concern. It could be removed from the site with minimal effort.
Okay. And is there any sort of like staging area need? Like most of your equipment and everything will be in an area that's already disturbed. You're not going to be clearing out any additional area for the upweller, the storage of cages or anything like that, correct?
I don't see any need for changing anything that's out there. The way it is just naturally very open to maintenance and for care of the animals, I don't think there's anything that I need to do in that area at all. So
Okay,
no,
so-
I wouldn't be disturbing anything.
All right, and you wouldn't be constructing like kind of like a shed or some sort of enclosure to protect the equipment or anything like that at this time?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Going back to the oyster bags, how long are they usually, been a while since we've seen an aquaculture, how long are they usually in the water? So what's the time frame for the bags to be in the water?
Well, for our site, I'd only be able to keep them in during the period that the canal is closed to shellfishing. So they would be out by the end of September when the shellfishing opens back up at the beginning of October, I believe.
So you put them in when?
It's going to vary with the growing. They'll probably be in about 2 months, 2.5 months, depending on how quickly the oysters mature. The larger ones are culled out and moved out into the canal to give the smaller ones more area and growth in the upweller. It would probably, like I said, maybe 2 months be July, August that they'd be out there.
Okay,
Excuse me, about halfway through July to halfway into September, because we'd want to be moving them out and getting them out into the grow out area before the deadline comes.
okay. I think those are all my questions right now, Mr. Chairman. And at the end, I'd like to just remind the board of a couple of things they need to review since it's been a while. Kevin Newton, anything to add?
No, you did a good job covering a lot of the
Okay.
questions that we had as staff.
All right. We'll open up to staff comment. I'm sorry, commission comments. I'm gonna start with Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jennifer, I appreciated all your questions, and I learned even more about what's going on here. I think we've discussed this for some time, and although I'm not completely clear on the DMF's letter, after review, it appears that they're discussing a selectmen's vote. I think it meets the conservation requirements for the project. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I can see if I can find the DMF letters for you guys. Go on, Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Peter?
I agree with Steve.
Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, first comment I had was, I looked over the plot we have too, and it sure looks like those bags are set at right at mean low water, which if you have a low, or even if you're at mean low, the bags are going to be sitting on the bottom. I guess you don't want that. So would you plan to move them out some actually?
I would not be looking to move them out as much as just set them up so that they are not, like I said, where the area is the shallowest. I'd be trying to configure my bag lines so that the furthest section out is in water, and where it gets close to the shore, there wouldn't be any bags resting. It's going to take a little trial and effort because it's not a nice symmetrical shoreline. So it's, you have square rectangular bags and, a flowing shore. So we'll have to play around with a little bit, like I said, but we don't want to move it out past the dock into the channel. We just want to keep the bags from resting on the mud out of the water.
Can you put something on the bottom of the bags like we put on docks to keep them off the bottom so they don't scour the bottom?
Something I'd have to investigate and look into. I haven't seen anything like that, but I don't know that there isn't. So
That might be good to keep from scrubbing back and forth on the bottom as the tide moves bags around a little bit. Another thing, I don't know how much water is involved in this upweller, but how do you vent it or exhaust it back into the canal? You have a 2-inch pipe running full speed ahead, I'm sure.
Well, the pumps would obviously pump it up, and likewise, we'd have a return pipe that would go down and we'd fan it out to a multiple channel V line so that it's not all blasting out in a single pipeline, but spread out over like a 45 or 60-degree angle.
Good. I think we'd like to see something like, I think I'd like to see something like that on the plan, just to make sure we don't have one pipe running out and scouring to the bottom. That's all.
Thank you. Kevin?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Scott, didn't you say in your earlier narrative that you have these sliding on a PVC pipe? So wouldn't you have a stop so it could only go so low? The bags, that is.
They're tied up at the top. Yeah, there's yeah, you could probably do that. It might need an additional vortex anchor if that would be acceptable to the Conservation Commission to put one more in the area of the shallower shoreline there, and I could put a stop so that at that point the bags would be arrested in their descent and it would keep them up off of that area. I had just down in Falmouth, they've just got the 4 corner posts, but if I were to put another one in that area, I could keep the level of bags higher.
Okay. Thank you. Courtney?
Basically, I think I agree with Steve as well, his comments. As far as the location of the bags, the actual physical location of the bags in the real world, the plan that you shows where you're going to locate the bags. The question I have is, if I understand your presentation, the bags would only be put in locations where they wouldn't bottom out, because then they'd be out of the water. There wouldn't be enough depth, and that's not good for the oyster. Is that an accurate?
Correct.
Yeah.
We selected and displayed an area that we're aiming to place the bags. However, and because of the topography of the layout, we may have to place less bags within that area, which is why we try to encompass the entire area that we would be looking to.
Right. Yeah.
And once
So-
again, those black mesh bags that you have, like I said, that the town uses, are very shallow draft. They probably at their widest point is maybe 4 inches, I would say, depth.
Right. You don't, whether they hit the bottom or not, the main thing is you don't want them out of the water, because that's the end of the oysters.
Well, no, that's not. I'll
Water?
tell you, they're tough little critters. You can't leave them out there all day, but if they were out for a small period of time, it probably, in extreme tide, I don't think that's going to kill them. But once again, if I've got the pipe there, I can use that area. That allows me just a little bit more of a flex with the configuration of the bags and how they're set up. And like I said, I can keep it so that the bags are maybe even the use of a couple of dummy bags that would be suspended out of the water and wouldn't have any of the shellfish in them. However, would keep the configuration straight and keep the bags with the shellfish out in the water area and just use those as placeholders. But the 5th post was actually a good, I think, addition, if that's acceptable. I was just trying to keep the impact minimal by having the corner posts.
Okay. No other question.
Okay. Betsy?
Yeah, Courtney, they can take a little bit of exposure. When you see low tides, you see oysters on the rocks.
No, I understand, but I mean, the goal is he wants to keep them submerged as much as possible. It
Yeah,
sounds like when he's positioning the oyster bags, he's gonna position them where he's got enough depth, so when there's low tide, they're not on the bottom or out of the water.
No, I understand that. And I think Jamie's suggestion and an extra anchor an extra stop would help. I had the same questions that Jen had. Is there a hurricane plan? And is the upweller on a trailer? But you just explained that you could haul it higher ground if a storm came. And presumably we could require you to submit a storm plan, a written storm plan, which
Okay.
hopefully you'd never have to use.
Hopefully.
Was that an answer? There's no storm plan?
There's no written storm plan submitted, Mr. Chairman, but if Mark needs a revised plan, and we have a continuance, that would be a requirement for one of the continuance for, items for the continuance. I know Mark wants to see a revised plan, correct, Mark? Mark, you're on mute.
He shook his head yes.
You're nodding, Mark. I see you.
I thought I was muted, yeah.
Okay.
I do have one other question, Jamie, and that is there a requirement? Maybe Mr. Brodsky would know the answer to this, but for some kind of a discharge permit, an EPA discharge permit, if you pump water out and you put it back, I understand what you're doing, but I was director of a marine lab and we were required to have a discharge permit from EPA for our saltwater system. So I'm just wondering if that's a requirement.
I don't know about that, Betsy. I can check with Chuck and Greg on that one.
Yeah, I mean,
The
obviously,
town has a discharge for the upwellers.
yeah, I mean, obviously, our system had a much larger volume than you're gonna have. But
I can check with somebody on that, Betsy. Unless Attorney Brodsky knows the answer to that.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
Yes, please.
Thank you. No, I don't know the specific answer to the question. The only nippity style permits I've seen are for larger quantities of water that are being discharged.
well, that's what I'm saying. There might be a volume threshold.
I'm sure there is, Betsy.
Anything else, Bets?
Mm-mm.
All right. What are we looking for in a revised plan?
Mark, what was that you wanted again?
Just a description of the design of the exhaust or exit for the upweller water flow.
Okay.
And
Okay.
something about, again, it makes me uncomfortable seeing the map, the layout we have here, which shows the bags sitting at mean low water. And if they're sitting at mean low water, they're out of the water. And I would think not so much worrying about whether the shellfish are living, but whether we're scouring the bottom or just damaging the bottom more than the shell water issue, the life of the fish issue.
Scott, when you have a length like that, how many floating? So let me go back to my plan here. So you said you're just going to do the four corners of that longer proposed floating oyster bag area? You
Nope.
don't have any pipes in the middle at all holding this system up?
The original proposal was just for the four corner posts. There were not additional. However, like I said, I'd be happy to add additional if it would.
If you added additional, for lack of a better term, pipes with some float stops that would prevent the bags resting on the bottom and get them as far into that, because Mark's right, you're between 1 and 2 feet of water there. So that makes us a little nervous, if not nervous. To have the bags resting on the bottom, I do share Mark's, Commissioner Gurney's concerns on that. So if we could see something with some float stops to kind of prevent that from happening and keep those suspended off the ground, Mark, would that alleviate some concerns?
It would. as long as we're expended. These things are floating bags, right? The ones I've seen, there's a float, that the bag is usually suspended.
Yeah,
Yes.
Float, so it's really quite a bit below the water surface. And if the water surface is at 0, then these things are all sitting on the ground. Not all of them, but the ones in that one segment where they're rather shallow.
Well, once again, the bag itself is only about 4 inches of depth. It has a 4-inch block of foam that runs down each side of the bag that keeps it floating. Those are zip tied to the side. So there'll be some weight from the shellfish in there. So there will be in the weight of the actual the bags. But once again, I don't think that the depth that they draw will be more than a couple of inches. If you're familiar with the black mesh bags that they use down in Little Pond, that the town uses, they're very low profile, very lightweight, and the animals will be in a juvenile state, so they won't have a lot of weight to them themselves either.
Maybe.
Anything else? All right, Jen, what do we have for public comment?
oh, yes. So we do have a public comment from Brian Wall. It says, Commissioners, Arlene Wilson and I represent James Mamory, trustee, owner of the property across the canal from the applicant's property. Mr. Mamory is opposed to the project. We have submitted written comments that also sought to address the commission. Just to remind Mr. Chairman that council has recommended that all comment from abutters and any sort of concerned citizen or resident prior to the hearing or through the chat function. Just to remind the commission, you have received a number of correspondence from A.M. Wilson Associates dated April 20, starting in January 8th, 2020, April 21st, 2020, August 24th, and August 28th. I would ask the board to review those just because we are on Zoom and those written testimonies have come in, as well as a number of correspondence from Attorney Wall for the next hearing. So in case you have any questions regarding that, so that they the abutters representatives can respond through the chat function to the commission. So I would ask that you review that. And a date, is that what you were looking for, Mr. Chairman? Oh, no, you were looking for comment. Sorry.
Okay, well, that's it for public comment.
That was all, unless Attorney
I mean, that's a lot.
or Ms. Wilson have anything else to add. That was it for the chat.
Okay. And you've all received the correspondence that we've had starting back in January. So are we clear on what we want for this
Oh, and today's
continuance?
correspondence
Because,
as well, sorry.
Yep. So revise the plan showing the discharge pipe
For the upweller,
and a storm.
additional pipe
Yeah,
pilings with float stops, and a storm plan.
Okay.
Very good.
Mr. Brodsky?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I did listen to your prior discussion regarding closing public hearings. And given that our to-do list is fairly small, is this an opportunity for the commission to, excuse me one moment, to close the public hearing? And if the commission was going to grant an order of conditions approving the project, to simply condition it on the provision of those three, I think they're relatively minor technical details.
The staff would say the storm plan might, the storm plan might generate some concern from the commission, Mr. Chairman. And as much as this hearing has been on our agenda for a very long time, staff would be uncomfortable. I would not want the commission to have any comments or concerns about the storm plan specifically and not be able to address those at a hearing, during a public hearing. So I would suggest continuing it. I hate to do that, but
Yeah.
that's how the staff feels.
No, I concur.
Thank you, Mr.
We
Chairman.
all want to see this get
We all
closed,
want to
but
see this project moving forward, but we just do have a few more things that we need to just button up. Since we haven't heard any of, we haven't seen this project since January. January? Betsy, am I reading that right? January?
well, it
First date,
originated in December
January 8th.
19.
Yeah, January 8th, so.
Yeah.
I think it's
Okay, so do
appropriate.
we have,
I do think it's appropriate to continue the hearing, also to give the commission time to review this, the other submittals regarding this project that had come in to refresh everybody's memory. So if there are any questions, they can be addressed.
okay, so do we have a request from the applicant for a continuance?
Yes, I'd like to.
Please don't continue to the 16th.
You can't have the 16.
I just don't know how backed up BSS design is at the moment, so it's hard for me to. What
Well,
would
we
be
could give you the 23rd, Mr. Tynell, and the new plan wouldn't need to be into our office until the 16th. So that kind of gives Tom 2 weeks. And at that time, if you need additional time for Tom, we can address that then. But at least we'll give you like 3 weeks until the next hearing and 2 weeks until Tom needs to get us a plan. Unless you go further out, give me one moment where I can find my calendar. I think the next hearing after that, I can add in my add would be the 30th of September. Up to you. Mr.
Can we get more
Tynell,
time on the 30th, please?
you want the 30th?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Not a problem.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, at the request of the applicant, I'll move that we continue this till September 30.
Second, Gladfelter?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until September 30th. Sounds like we're clear on what we're looking for. So with that, I'm going to call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve? Thank you. Is unanimous. This hearing is continued until the 30th. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Tynell.
everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Brodsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, continued request to amend the existing order of conditions. Robert Richards, 45 Little Neck Bars Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install an additional concrete slab area or to install a series of wood frame deck panels beneath the structure and to install bayberry plants. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe I just promoted Mr. Borselli up. Mike, are you with us? Oh,
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
there you are,
Before
Mike.
you start,
Right there.
Hello, everybody.
Betsy, would you clarify? Hold on, Mike,
The quorum,
please.
it's everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Borselli, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, for the record, Michael Borselli, I represent the applicant. With your permission, I'll share my screen, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
Give me your agenda then.
Hopefully you're seeing my site plan.
Yes, we are, Mike.
Oh, but that's a nice sea view. Snowmobile route?
Yeah.
There we go.
It was. In those hot summer days, it's nice to look at that.
Yeah.
This is a continuance of a previously amended request. If you recall, we ironed out a lot of the details, and the only reason we continued this was to provide to you a layout of how the bluestone pavers would be laid out in the crushed stone base that we proposed as a substitute for the original concrete slab. So if you look at the site plan, I'm zooming in on it for reference. The tan areas now are showing the 18 by 48 inch slabs spaced under the building. I did a blow up over here. You can see that it shows the house and the way that the pattern would be installed under the building. So these are set in 3/4 to 1.5 inch crushed stone, spaced 1 foot apart. So one of the things we talked about, which I'm hoping happens, is as the sand migrates under the building, the crushed stone will capture some of the fine sand particles into the voids of the crushed stone, and it'll create more of a sandy, smooth surface with the bluestone pavers embedded in this pattern. So that was the only reason we continued the hearing. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll unshare my screen.
Thank you, Mike. All right, Jen?
I have no questions.
All right. Betsy?
This is not what I envisioned, but I don't have a problem with this. So maybe it's a good thing that we had a plan.
Courtney?
Yeah, I'd envisioned more bluestone paths going across it rather than almost a bluestone patio. You know, I'm fine with it, but I thought there was going to be more of a minimal use of the bluestone. That was my understanding before. Am I wrong on that?
Kevin? Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to
Am I
interrupt you.
wrong in that assumption? I thought it was going to be like paths going across. In other words, so it would allow people to be able to cross the thing more comfortably than to walk on 1.5 inch stone.
Yeah, well, that is the concept, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, so there's a difference between bluestone paths, too wide for, across the thing, and the entire area filled with bluestone pavers. I mean, how much different is that than what you'd envision when you talked about deck or a concrete slab? I mean, it's.
Well,
But his proposal did say that using a concrete slab or bluestone set in stone, so I don't know, interpretation, I guess.
well, we were not sure why you didn't want the concrete, to be honest, but this was a compromise to, just have these stones laid in a uniform pattern in a bed of crushed stone. So I'm not sure what the concern would be as it relates to the wetland resource areas and the wetlands regulations.
I'll defer to Jen. How do you feel?
Well, keeping it appropriate. All right, anything else, Courtney?
No, I mean, if Jen is comfortable with it, I'll.
All right. Moving on, Kevin?
I think it's beautiful. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mark?
Looks good to me.
Yeah.
This is why we wanted to see the plan. So thank you for submitting it, Michael.
Sure, you're welcome. I gotta find a way to make
Peter?
myself not in a shadow with the lighting. I apologize for that. You don't get to see my pretty face as easily. Sorry.
They have to see mine, they have to see yours. Peter?
No questions.
All right. Steve?
Question.
All right. I think it looks good. I think you've represented what you were asking for. All right. What are you guys thinking?
I'll move to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Gladfelter, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing, take it under advisement. Are there any public comments, Jen?
No, but the board did receive a number of correspondence in opposition to the original project, so I would ask that you review those before deliberation, just like the last hearing.
Okay.
But you don't have
Duly
any
noted.
chats.
All right, there's no further comments. I'm gonna call for the vote.
Yeah.
Okay, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Mr. Borselli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Good night. All right, next up, request to extend the existing order of conditions. First up, Robert Richards, 45 Little Neck Bars Road, Falmouth, Mass, DEP number 25-4292, requesting extension to October 8th, 2021. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the staff recommends a one-year extension.
So move.
Second, Pat.
Are we still at 45 Little Neck Bars?
Yes.
Correct. Remember the last time Mr. Borselli put the wrong DEP, requested the wrong DEP number for extension?
But we're talking 4292.
We are talking 42.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
well, I'll just add that to what I just
Okay.
form sheet.
Okay. Steve, you made the motion, is that correct?
I made the second. Courtney made the motion.
I'm sorry. Mr. Byrd refuses to use his name.
Everybody knows his
All right, we
voice.
have a motion.
Excuse me.
That was subtle, Jamie.
Yeah, that went out the window a long time ago. All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation of a one-year extension. Betsy?
You know,
Betsy?
That's you mute.
Gladfelter, aye.
Mr. Byrd?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve? Thank you. It is unanimous. We have granted a one-year extension. Next up, Mark and Cynthia Albers, 0 Great Bay Street, East Falmouth, Mass, DEP number 25-4315. Request extension to September 25th, 2021.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the staff recommends a one-year extension.
To that date,
Yes.
So move, Gladfelter.
second, Bird.
Thank you. Yes, that is September 25th, 2021. All right, with that, we'll take the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Thank you. It is unanimous. That is one-year extension is granted. Next up, boat order conditions. First item, Dan O'Connor, Wild Harbor Yacht Club, Inc., 386 Wild Harbor Road, North Falmouth, Mass.
Mr. Chairman, this was the repair or reconstruction of the boat ramp. I do have one question for our staff. Kevin, when you met with Mr. Borselli, was there a marine contractor on site with you?
There was.
Who was that?
He has done previous work for the town. Can't think of his name right now. He's worked on town landings.
Okay, so one of the special conditions was that, we do another pre-construction meeting when they're about to, prior to them starting the project. This is the one where they are installing the cofferdam because they are pouring the concrete with the reinforced rebar. Dewatering was a concern with the staff, and that I believe was addressed, as well as they'll be repairing that pipe alongside. Their boat ramp's in pretty tough shape. It does need repair,
Oh, yeah.
but I would like.
And they need to
know the
apply for
marine
new
contractor.
91, correct?
Yes, correct.
Does anybody have anything specific they'd like?
I'll make a motion to
All
accept
right.
us.
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions as discussed and as recommended by staff. There's nothing further. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve. It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Philip H. Warren and Susan Warren, Warren Family Irrevocable Trust, 132 Sitters Pond Road, Falmouth, Mass.
This is the floating dock in Sitters Pond. I think the only concern that the staff had was where they're doing that like little public access through the mitigation, but they said that no mitigation plantings will be removed for that public access. So it met all the dock requirements for a floating dock in that location.
Anybody have anything particular they'd like in there?
I can't remember if this was the one we had where they were having an alternative of jetting the posts in. Is it?
You did mention.
Yes, you did mention that.
Hearing.
So we certainly should.
So you don't want them to jet the pilings in.
No.
They always say they're not going to jet them, but they do because they
I know. We
do. It's like you tell them not to jet the pilings in, and they always do. But
these are easy to
out of
get
it,
in.
Mark, I promise. This particularly is a little bit of a different area than one of the finger ponds.
I'll make a motion to accept as discussed. Gladfelter.
Bird, second.
Okay, if there's nothing further, We're gonna vote on the order. We have a motion, and a second, to accept the order conditions as discussed and recommended by staff. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve? It is unanimous. We've issued an order of conditions. Next up, Brian P. Halligan, 110 Oyster Pond Road, Falmouth, Mass.
This is the Phragmites removal project, Mr. Chairman. The large Phragmites removal project. No native shrubs are going to be removed for the creation of the path. They have a one-time time of year restriction for in-water work. Silt curtain. And the methodology needs to follow what was presented to the board by Wilkinson Ecological Design. So that will be written in that they're the sole entity to perform this work as detailed out in their methodology. And if they wanted to use someone else, the board has the right to approve that contractor. Basically standard language when you see something like this, or a coastal bank, or any sort of wetland restoration plan. Other than that, I don't think I had any questions other than their little kayak app. That was gonna be really kind of smushy.
All right. Anybody have anything else?
Maybe a thank you note for doing it.
Right.
You can participate, all the Phragmites you can eat. All right, what are you thinking?
Gladfelter, make a motion to close it, and, I mean, not close it, to accept as discussed. It's already closed.
Walsh, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions as discussed and as recommended by staff. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve? It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Elizabeth Colt, the Colt Simmons Family Trust, 24 Millfield Street, Woods Hole, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was the reconstruction of the deck, the repair of the dock, some restoration plantings, walkways being redesigned. The only concern, they addressed the staff's concerns regarding the planting, and as well as moving closer. So they did kind of bring that first step off the deck and incorporate it into the deck so that the structure isn't moving any closer than the present primary structure. Do we remember this one, guys?
Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
Okay. So staff was happy to see that they revised the switchgrass to a woodier shrub, so that was nice.
Right. I'll move to accept the order as discussed.
Second, Walsh.
Okay, we have a motion. Steve, did you have a comment?
No, sir.
All right. We have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve. It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Thank you. Next up, Bruno DeFazio, 41 Moonpenny Lane, Falmouth, Mass.
This was
I
the
don't know if it matters, but that's
construction,
East Falmouth.
this is the construction of the new house on Moonpenny Lane. The board asked for that revised plan just to show the location of the trees along that at least first 25 feet from that limit of work. Met all the performance standards, so I don't think there was any real special conditions the board wanted to see. I could be wrong.
No, they incorporated the questions we had. I mean,
Yeah,
they
they did.
incorporated what we needed. So I'll make,
Is there anybody want to see in there? All right.
I'll make a motion to
Betsy?
accept as discussed.
Bird, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the order of conditions as discussed and recommended. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ready, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. A reminder, everyone, that there is no meeting next week. And that's all we have, folks.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second, Walsh.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ready, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. IT, if you would stop recording. Thank you for your help. Thomas and Adriana.